So, Sonic Prime Season 2 just dropped, and it was kinda bad. This isn't because Sonic Prime itself is bad. I actually think the first season was good. It's not perfect, of course, but I actually think the first season didn't have any major issues. I'll probably go into why it's pretty competent for a first season in another video, but for now, I'll only reference it if necessary for this video. In the first season, we've seen Sonic travel through different shadow dimensions and try to fix things, usually failing, but managing to slowly earn varying degrees of trust from the alternate versions of his friends that he meets along the way. He starts the story not knowing what happened to the world or how to fix it, but by the end of the season, he's realized he needs the help of the people he met and also learns that his objective to bring his home back to life is to collect the Prism Shards. Easy enough. Collect the MacGuffins, form a strong bond with your friends, make a strong contrast at the end of the journey with how it all started when they weren't friendly at all, showing how far we've come by the end. There's no way this tried and true story template could get fumbled. Right? Right? The biggest issue when it comes to Season 2 is that it feels like the story just doesn't go anywhere until the very last episode. This isn't exactly just a pacing problem, because pacing is how fast the plot moves from one point to the other. That's an oversimplification, but anyways, pacing is intrinsically connected to two things that are just as important on their own: the evolution of the characters and the progress they make on their quest. So, with that established, let's take a look at how Sonic Prime's second season approaches these aspects of its story. We start off by having Sonic come face to face with all his mistakes through the character of Shadow. He gets Sonic to acknowledge just how incompetent he's been so far in the story, and how that's not something to take lightly because of just how much is at stake. Shadow wants to go home, and Sonic is sort of sucking at undoing the mess he made. So, logically, Shadow wants to take a crack at it himself. I'm not sure why Sonic isn't willing to go along with it. They don't really explain it outside of Sonic just being stubborn. He could have said that it was his mess and he should be the one to fix it, but it doesn't matter anyway. Because of the MacGuffins in the story, the only one that can travel across worlds is Sonic, so the whole fight we just had was kind of pointless. Well, it wasn't entirely pointless. It could lay the groundwork for some development for Sonic's character, but let's save the character discussion for the later segment. With Sonic now taking the reins while Shadow helps him out in the void a few times, their objective is to get the Prism Shards before the Chaos Council. We start following Sonic as he hops world to world. However, every single time, we watch Sonic struggle to get the Prism Shard and almost succeed, only to have it taken away at the very last second. Every single time. We start the episode without a shard, and we end the episode without a shard. It kind of feels like we're watching Sonic running on a hamster wheel over and over. It starts off as slightly boring, but then slowly gets monotonous. These last second losses are not subverting our expectations. They're not making the show unpredictable, it's doing the opposite. It's actually making it predictable while we watch Sonic fail again and again, something that we already got enough of in the first season. Of course, the excuse for all this is that Nine has been captured and is being forced to work for the Chaos Council, which means he can just grab the shards from inside once an opportunity comes up. That's fine and all, but if Sonic's just going to fail every single time and Nine is going to have to steal all the shards anyway, then why did we just watch Sonic try and grab them for multiple episodes? You could remove all of the battles about the shards and no major plot points would have been lost. Alright, let's give him some slack. Maybe it wasn't about the destination. Maybe the characters we met were the journey we had all along the way? Or something like that? With Sonic having a good excuse to revisit all those characters he met, and with the quest going absolutely nowhere, then surely this was all planned so we could have some much needed character development, while the villains just take care of the plot instead, right? No, not at all actually. You know, usually characters that stay the same for multiple seasons are kind of limited and difficult to write to make them engaging. But don't you worry, the characters in this season don't stay the same at all. In fact, they completely regress. Remember how Sonic had to build up some sort of friendship or respect or at least an ounce of friendliness with these different world inhabitants? It's all basically gone. Each time he revisits these worlds, an old story beat gets reused. Thorn wants to protect the forest, the rest of the gang doesn't want to help, they just care about survival regardless of what happens to their home. The rebels don't trust Sonic again and have to build up their faith in him again. The pirates also don't trust Sonic again, however, there's actually a little bit more to it than just that. I don't see a reason to go into the first two, as they don't really have an explanation for why they regressed. They just sort of do, and they slowly waste your time as the viewer until they decide to remember their character development again. The pirates, however, actually have a reason. Dredd does not want to give the shard to Sonic, he wants it for himself. I mean, this feels like a weird escalation. Sure, he did come off like he was using Sonic in the first season, but it never really sounded like he hated him or disliked him. Couldn't he have just talked to Sonic about it and let him borrow the shard like Thorn does earlier in this season? She doesn't want to give up her shard either, but after what they've been through and with the direct danger of the Chaos Council raiding her home, she makes the compromise. Pretty logical. Dredd, of course, despite having the exact same circumstance, doesn't do any of this. He doesn't talk to Sonic. He doesn't even have a single line across either season where he directly tells Sonic that he doesn't want to give up his shard. No, he just directly jumps to convincing his crew that Sonic has completely betrayed them. Misunderstandings between characters that get in the way of the story. Great. Surely the crew will be smart enough to at least challenge Dredd on this. After all, they replaced him almost immediately as captain in favor of Sonic last time. It's not like they particularly take Dredd's word as gospel. I mean, Sonic's done more than enough last time to earn their respect to at least spark some sort of argument. No, they just completely turned on Sonic. Now, this on its own is really annoying. Misunderstandings are the cheapest way to have conflict between characters. It's why I don't like the original Spider-Man trilogy. Every twist and turn is a misunderstanding between characters. But you know what's worse than one misunderstanding causing character dynamics to regress? Having all the character dynamics in the show regress, one after the other. The plot is already moving at a monotonous pace where it feels like nothing is actually progressing. But with all the different groups having some stupid recycle of their original conflict, the characters make it worse. It makes watching these episodes go from monotonous to grating, like scratching a chalkboard with your fingernails. No amount of constant action is going to make this story feel like it's going anywhere, because the characters in the plot feel like they're moving at crawl speed. To top it all off, it doesn't help that visually we're just seeing the same characters fight the same enemies. The only Chaos Council member that wears a robot and goes down to fight are the same members that were fighting in the previous season. The other members just stay inside the spaceships. It's such a wasted opportunity to add enemy variety. The only member that actually joins the fight outside of piloting a spaceship is Dr. Don't. And what does he do? He takes control over one of the countless generic-looking Egg Forcers. Great. That's so exciting. So, with the plot feeling like it goes nowhere, and the characters recycling their same character arcs from the last season, what does this season do that's actually new? Well, Shadow pops up a few times. He usually just says something logical to Sonic that Sonic brushes off like a moron. In terms of truly helping, he does the bare minimum. Not sure if the writers are saving him for the last season, or if they're just too scared to write him into the story properly. For what it's worth, when he's there, his dynamic with Sonic is actually pretty competent. Rusty Rose has a character arc. Rusty's actually one of my favorite things about this show. She has a cool design, but more importantly, she has a lot more room to grow. And she does. Kind of. Her screen time is sort of limited, but we focus on her for an episode or two. The Chaos Council basically decides to abandon her, leaving her in the hands of the pirates. She looks like she's glitching out in anger because of this betrayal, and it sort of makes her turn against the council. Then we get some really great moments of her bonding with Black Rose, the pirate version of Amy. I'm not sure why they picked this version specifically, but I guess it works better than the alternative, which is Thorn. Black Rose is much closer to the regular Amy by comparison, so she's kind of the best choice to teach a robot Amy about how to be Amy through friendship. My only complaint is it feels like her programming would have just glitched into her being more like Amy anyways because of how the order of events played out. If Black Rose was having some tiny bonding moments with Rusty before she got betrayed by the council, with just a little bit of dialogue, no need to do too much, then it would make this friendship matter much more. Seeing her glitch a little every now and then because of Black Rose's attempts to befriend her, until she finally snaps when the council turns on her, to me that would have made it just a stronger bond and stronger character arc overall. And then there's Nine. Nine is actually one of the better written characters in the show. He has his own motives, his own flaws, and his own arc where some flaws get overcome and some other flaws cause conflict between him and other characters. That's the exact structure of a good character for his role in the story. The problem is he's AFK for most of the season. By that, I don't mean he doesn't do anything or doesn't have any screen time. I just mean that he's imprisoned by the Chaos Council, leaving everything up to Sonic until he is finally allowed by the writers to be involved in a direct way again. This isn't bad on its own, but when the story keeps repeating how important teamwork is over and over and over, it feels kind of hypocritical. Like the story's insisting all the characters matter, but also insisting at the same time that Sonic has to be so much more special than the other characters, not because he has something about his personality that is important and unique to solve this situation, mind you, but because he's just Sonic. Making teamwork be just beating up goons and then splitting up when the real story takes place is pretty much the worst way you could write teamwork in a story. But constantly talking about how important teamwork is, without actually following through when it matters to the writing, kinda reminds me of another Sonic story that wouldn't shut up about it, only to be too scared to commit by the end. This of course doesn't just hinder Nine, it also hinders Shadow too. They're both smart characters with their own personalities that are fun to watch and even more fun when they're playing off Sonic. But they're barely ever there in person for Sonic to actually play off of them. As for Sonic's character, well, we sort of just went over it in a way. If the quest doesn't feel like it's progressing, and the side characters have their own relationships with the main character regress to annoying distractions, with the only characters that didn't regress being limited to little screen time or just not being involved directly, then all we're left with is a protagonist that doesn't feel like he's going anywhere and won't shut up. Won't shut up, huh? Oh right, I almost forgot. Metal Sonic, he sort of exists here. Or I guess I should say Chaos Sonic. He's basically Metal Sonic, but with Sonic's personality added in, like considered an extra part that they added to the build. He's kind of gimmicky, but I actually prefer this instead of adding regular Metal Sonic, because I don't think he would have fit for this story and what they wanted to do. They wanted to show Sonic how annoying he is by giving him a mirror to look into. That's not a horrible idea on paper, we just have to wait and see if it actually gets followed up on later. In conclusion, the Season 2 of Sonic Prime feels like walking through mud with your mother nagging you constantly. Everything feels like it's barely moving forward, and the only thing going at a fast speed is Sonic's constant attempts at comedy. When you're not enjoying the main experience, the comic relief doesn't really relieve anything. That's really the problem, not the jokes themselves. It's honestly a shame because the characters themselves aren't bad, it's just that there's not really any new interactions. For example, Rusty interacting with Black Rose is completely new, so it feels very fresh. Shadow interacting with Sonic is the same way. And Nine doesn't really recycle his character from the first season, he develops as we go, so his interactions with Sonic get more interesting as they keep interacting and bouncing off each other until they come to a disagreement at the end of the season. It's just that everything else ultimately feels monotonous. Thanks for watching, and if you're interested in a basic and simple draft that kind of rewrites and tries to fix the issues with this season, let me know. I've got it written down, but I'm not sure if people would really watch it. It's just that I feel criticism isn't enough, and thinking of ways to actually fix the issues is much more productive, especially since there's some minor things that I liked and didn't like about this season that I didn't really go into here because they're more subjective and opinion based, which I would include and talk about in my hypothetical rewrite. At least I will try to make it an entertaining video if I do make it. See ya!